Hello everyone, this is Remlays from 40k Theories, and welcome to this new episode of 40k Lore for Newcomers. For this episode, we will be continuing our brief look at the Warhammer 40,000 timeline. This video will focus more on humanity's actions throughout the timeline, though certain important Xenos events will also be documented throughout. So without further ado, let's begin. The following account is a continuation of certain events from M35 to the end of M36. Because of how intricate and detailed the events of this time were, only certain key events will be mentioned, which in turn will be expanded upon in future videos. In addition, there is also a small chance for potential inaccuracies regarding specific dates, due to contradicting sources. For events that occurred prior to M35, make sure to check out the previous videos in the 40k timeline. Circa 075 M35. The Nova Terra Interregnum begins. The ruling council of the world of Nova Terra secedes from the Imperium, declaring themselves and the entirety of the Segmentum Pacificus as an independent empire. In addition, a secondary and concurrent division would eventually spread throughout the Adeptus Mechanicus, Collegia Titanica and several closely aligned Space Marine chapters, resulting in the Moirae Schism. The Moirae Schism would eventually result in the destruction of the Moirae Forge world by the Martian fleets, and the founding of the Sons of Medusa Space Marine chapter. 104 M35. The Raven Wing Company of the Dark Angels chapter journeys to Nova Terra in an attempt to apprehend one of the mysterious Fallen, following rumours that a member of the world's ruling council was in fact the enigmatic being known as Cypher. Circa 200 M35. Ecclesiarch Benedin IV moves the ruling body of the Adeptus Ministorum from Terra to the world of Ophelia 7. Now unchecked, the power and influence of the Ecclesiarchy begins to grow ever greater, as the strength and numbers of their military force, the Frateris Templar, begins to rival that of the Astra Militarum. 344 M35. An Orc Space Hulk crash lands upon the tomb world of Angelus. Imperial xenoarchaeology teams upon the world are stranded, and become either trapped underground within the ancient Necron tomb complexes, or horrifically mutated by the radiation emitted by the Hulk. Those humans trapped underground eventually degenerate into a race known by the Orcs as Diggers, while those affected by the radiation become known as Muties. The Orcs themselves establish a settlement known as Mechtown, and the world becomes informally designated by the Orcs as Gorkamorka. Circa 500 M35. Grieger XI becomes the new Ecclesiarch, and declares that the Holy Synod will return to Terra. His cardinals oppose such an act, but tithes are increased to finance the relocation and renovation of the ecclesiarchal palace upon Terra, as well as the construction of more ecclesiarchal palaces upon other worlds. This increase in tithes leads to objections and complaints from the planetary governors of several worlds, and eventually mass riots begin erupting throughout the Imperium, with many worlds refusing to pay tithes to the Ecclesiarchy. The forces of the Frateris Templar are dispatched to put down any revolt, and assassins are even deployed to slay stubborn governors upon these worlds. These events sow the seeds for the Age of Apostasy. 789 M35. The world of Tau was discovered by the Adeptus Mechanicus exploratory vessel Land's Vision. The world and its Stone Age Xenos inhabitants are scheduled to be cleansed for Imperial colonization. However, violent warp storms unexpectedly erupt around the world, preventing this from happening. 867 M35. The Exodite world of Menimshimash is overrun by a mass demonic incursion. All life upon the world is either destroyed or corrupted by chaotic taint. 975 M35. The Ecclesiarchy begins rebuilding the divided Imperium into a religious state. A series of holy wars would erupt between the Imperium and the Empire of Nova Terra. The Dark Angel Space Marine chapter lends the Ecclesiarchy their aid as a cover story for their pursuit of more members of the Fallen. Unknown date M35. The former slave turned Archon, Asdrubal Vecht establishes the cult of the Black Heart and begins to make plans in order to overthrow the noble houses of the Drukhari realm of Camorra. Vecht increases the number of raids against Imperial territory within the Desiderian Gulf, forcing the Imperium to respond by dispatching warriors of the Salamanders chapter to put an end to the Xenos raids. Vecht's forces succeed in capturing the Salamander's strike cruiser, Forgehammer, and bring it back to Camorra, but the ship is confiscated by one of Vecht's rivals, Lord Zellion. The Astartes on board the Forgehammer continue to mount a fierce resistance against the Drukhari, before warriors of the Salamanders, Silver Skulls and Howling Griffins chapters come to their aid, having followed a psychic beacon emitted by the Forgehammer's librarian, Hestian. The Astartes slaughter thousands of Drukhari as they fought to make their escape from Camorra, resulting in the majority of the noble houses being destroyed. In the aftermath of the carnage, Asdrubal Vecht makes his move, seizing total control of Camorra and declares himself as the supreme overlord of the Drukhari realm. The cult of the Black Heart becomes the first of the Drukhari Cabals, now known as the Cabal of the Black Heart. Genestealers are first encountered by the Imperium upon the moon of Imgal. Early M36. The Space Marine chapters of the 13th to the 20th foundings are created. Adeptus Mechanicus Genitors attempt to remove several gene seed flaws found within the genetic heritage of many Astartes chapters, resulting in the 21st founding. The results of these experiments are mixed, with many suffering horrific flaws or mutations as a result. As such, this founding becomes known as the Cursed Founding. 104 M36. Several intact and fully functioning first-generation STCs are recovered by the Adeptus Mechanicus, within the region of space known as the Mortuum Chain. 200 M36. The Age of Apostasy begins. High Lord of the Administratum, Gog Vandire overthrows Paulus III and becomes the new Ecclesiarch. Because of his dual position within the High Lords, Vandire becomes the single most politically powerful mortal man within the Imperium, and his reign becomes known within historical records as the Reign of Blood. Vandire orders Ziz Jarek, the master of the Kalidas Assassin Temple, to assassinate the Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum and assume his identity. Jarek inadvertently slays a body double of the Grand Master, leading to a civil war within the Officio Assassinorum. The Grand Master eventually kills Jarek before fleeing into a self-imposed exile. The Inquisition establishes the Ordo Sicarius to monitor the actions of the Assassinorum, so that similar such events would not occur again in the future. Circa 200 to 230 M36. Vandire travels to the world of San Lior, where he discovers the female warrior cult known as the Daughters of the Emperor. Vandire manages to deceive the cult into believing that he has the personal protection and blessings of the Emperor himself, and the cult swears allegiance to him, becoming his personal bodyguards. The cult renames itself the Brides of the Emperor. The Holy Synod of the Ecclesiarchy attempts to oust Vandire from power, but fails. The Brides of the Emperor then execute each member of the Synod, cementing Vandire's stranglehold upon the Adeptus Ministorum. Circa 238 M36. Sebastian Thor is born upon the world of Dimamar. Circa 258 to 269 M36. Sebastian Thor becomes the leader of the long-hidden remnants of the Confederation of Light. Thor begins proselytizing the people of Dimamar in order to resist Vandire's tyrannical rule. Vandire dispatches the forces of the Frateris Templar to kill Thor, but the Templar fleet is caught within a violent warp storm that destroys it utterly when they translate out of the warp. Thor names this storm the Storm of the Emperor's Wrath, and claims that it is a sign of the Emperor's anger at Vandir, whose actions have dishonored the Emperor's name. The Confederation of Light emerges from hiding and begins to travel from world to world, preaching sermons against Vandir. Gustav Hediatrix, Fabricator General of Mars, demands that Vandir be brought to judgment. Vandir in response dissolves the Council of the High Lords of Terra and orders his forces to attack any who question his rule, including the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Adeptus Astartes, declaring that they are heretics. The Imperial Fists, Soul Drinkers, Black Templars, and Firehawk Space Marine chapters, and a host of Martian Skitarii lay siege to the Ecclesiarchal Palace upon Terra. Captain General Excelsior of the Adeptus Custodes and a number of Custodian Guard infiltrate the heart of Vandir's domain and meet with Alicia Dominica, the leader of the Brides of the Emperor, stating that their faith in the Emperor was being manipulated by Gog Vandir. Leaving his men as hostages, Excelsior would escort Dominica and 5 of her companions, Catherine, Sylvana, Lucia, Mina, and Arabella, through a series of underground passages, escorting them to the throne room of the Imperial Palace and bringing them before the Emperor himself. The 5 brides return to Vandir's stronghold, and Alicia Dominica personally declares Vandir as a heretic and a traitor before executing him. The High Lords of Terra are reinstated, and many of Vandir's supporters are put on trial. Sebastian Thor is also put on trial but is declared innocent, and subsequently is instated as Ecclesiarch. The decree passive is passed, forbidding the Adeptus Ministorum from having men under arms. Due to a loophole within the decree's wording, the Brides of the Emperor are allowed to act as a chamber militant for the Ecclesiarchy, and once formally instated, they become known as the Adeptus Sororitas, or Sisters of Battle. Circa 270, M36. Sebastian Thor leaves the Ecclesiarchal Palace and spends the next 8 decades travelling throughout the Imperium to quell heresy and purge apostates. 310, M36. Cardinal Bucharus of the world of Gathalamor begins establishing an empire for himself by preaching that Terra and the Emperor had fallen, declaring that Gathalamor was now the spiritual centre of this new Imperium. His heresies would become known as the Plague of Unbelief. Bucharus attempts to lead his crusade into the Fenris system and bring the worlds within under his rule, but suffers horrendous losses and setbacks thanks to the actions of the Space Wolves chapter, who are sworn to protect all worlds within the Fenris system. One of Bucharus's lieutenants, Brother Macius, is captured and interrogated by the Dark Angels. Circa 350, M36. Sebastian Thor returns to Terra before shortly dying at the age of 112. Alexis XXII is appointed as his successor as Ecclesiarch. Alexis further devised a Convent Sanctorum and the Convent Priorus of the Adeptus Sororitas, granting each convent 2 militant orders. These militant orders founded are the orders of the Ebon Chalice, Valorous Heart, Fiery Heart, and Argent Shroud. Circa 500, M36. The primitive Tau race continues advancing their civilization. This leads to a series of violent wars between the different tribal subspecies of Tau. These wars become known within Tau historical records as the Mont Tau, or Death Age. 565, M36. The world of Giro Alphas begins to suffer from a prolonged planetary drought. In desperation, the native tribes begin praying for rain. Their prayers are answered by the plague god Nurgle, and a torrential downpour begins lasting 8 days and nights. This rain causes thousands to drown and millions more to die from disease. The talisman of Nurgle, Epidemius, is sent to catalogue the destruction. The surviving defenders are overcome by the talisman's horde. and the world disappears from Imperial records but 1 week later. 723 M36. The Fifth Black Crusade, led by Abaddon the Despoiler, begins. The demon prince Doombreed is summoned, and succeeds in destroying the Venerator and Warhawk Space Marine chapters. 791 M36. The enigmatic Tau known as the Ethereals reveal themselves to the other Tau tribes before a battle at a place known as Fio Vash. Their presence ends the Mont Tau as the Ethereals begin to unify each of the warring tribes. The caste system is introduced, as is their philosophy of the Tau Va or greater good, and the United Tau Empire begins to expand. 901 M36. The Sixth Black Crusade takes place. Abaddon the Despoiler brings the Sons of Horus warband, known as the Sons of the Eye, to heel, killing their leader and absorbing their warband into his Black Legion. 989 M36. The prolonged warp storms and permanent warp rifts within the galaxy, such as the Eye of Terror and the Maelstrom, begin expanding in size. The number of souls fed to power the Golden Throne is increased by a factor of 4 to maintain the optimal power of the device, as well as to ensure the Astronomicon continues to burn brightly. The number of black ships is increased, as they continuously harvest a tithe of Psychers to feed their souls into the Golden Throne. And that concludes this portion of the Warhammer 40,000 timeline. Join us next time for events occurring from M37 onwards. If you liked this video, consider supporting us on Patreon for more content. To those who are new to 40k, we hope you learned something. So leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.